Ready to find your flow? AFSA's got you covered.
That's right. The hands-on training lab in Richardson, Texas is where you trade PowerPoints for pipe wrenches. Real tools, real systems, and real experience you can actually use.
And if you're ready to test your skills, check out the hands-on NFPA 25 workshops, where you'll inspect, test, and maintain live sprinkler systems and fire pumps. No simulations, no fluff, just pressure, flow, and know-how.
It's the perfect way to get under pressure without cracking under it.
So get fired up and register today at firesprinkler.org. Spots fill faster than a charged branch line.
AFSA, where you don't just learn the code, you live it. Welcome to the K Factor podcast, where we turn up the heat on all things fire protection. Brought to you by the American Fire Sprinkler Association, this podcast sparks conversations about the latest technology, trends, and tools shaping the industry. Join the AFSA tech team as we fan the flames of innovation in fire safety. Welcome to the K Factor podcast and AFSA Tech Talk. My name is Nate Williams, and we're switching it up today. You know, we're going to be interviewing Josh McDonald and Eric Andresen, both very good members of our technical services team. How y'all doing, fellas?
Good. Fantastic.
Doing well.
That's great.
Appreciate you flipping the script.
Of course. You know, I'm always here. You know, I like to keep you on your toes. Also helps keep listeners on their toes. You know, you never know what you're going to listen to over here.
Mixing it up.
And plus, I think it's very good to let people know where we're coming from and, you know, why you guys know what you know, instead of just a random guys that are opening up a textbook and just reading off a bunch of crap.
That happens every once in a while.
I mean, I do it a lot. But yeah, let's just jump right into it. And I guess one of the biggest things that I want to know, I mean, you two have known each other for a while. Can you kind of give us some background of kind of how you guys got into the industry and how you guys, you know, why you guys have such a great connection?
Let you start.
Oh, you're going to let me start?
Yeah.
It's fantastic. So we actually met going to Oklahoma State University. For me, it was a very easy school to pick and school to go to because it had a hands-on lab. And that's what you're going to notice, I think, as we've built our careers and kind of gone separate paths and met back together at the lab here is the hands-on training portion is something that we're both very passionate for, and something that we know that can make or break people's careers. So from Oklahoma State, of course, studied there for undergrad and graduate school. We both went in, well, Eric went into the insurance industry a little bit before me, where we got to go kind of honestly explore and kind of play a game of how it's made.
Good term for it.
Because we'd go out to sites that you never think of, from a bow and arrow manufacturer to a hospital to
Shape charge explosives manufacturer. Yeah.
all of the above, and we'd have to do a fire protection analysis, which was really cool. However, I thought that I got a little bit too far into my head, too deep into it too early, and moved on to the manufacturing side, which they had a hands-on lab, got to do a lot of technical services and help out with a little bit of engineering development. From there, of course, Bob comes on board, and we had worked together quite a few years at that point in time and realized that AFSA needed a hands-on lab and gave me a call up, and it's down here in Dallas, moved down here and knew that Eric was around. So I'll let him continue his story, but I just know that the joke's on him because he was a stay-at-home dad before we gave him a call. So,
very true.
Stuck now.
Yeah, so I ended up at Oklahoma State because of the fire protection program there. I knew I liked working with my hands. I knew I wanted to do something in the engineering field, but I didn't know about fire protection until my mom was actually working on a project and ended up working with a fire protection engineer, and came home and was telling me about working with this fire protection engineer and that she thought it'd be something I should look into as a career. And I basically told her she was lying to me and that's not a real job, which joke's on me now, but she convinced me to Google it. So I Googled it and I found Oklahoma State in Maryland. And,
at that time, was it Ask Jeeves or was it actually Google?
Both. But I looked into it and I was like, well, Maryland's a bit far away, so let's go take a look at Oklahoma State, and fell in love with the campus, fell in love with the program, loved that they had the hands-on lab because I'm a very hands-on person. And
football team was good.
Yes, unlike this year. But yeah, so the hands-on lab was really kind of instrumental, and it's also where I got the pleasure of meeting Josh. We worked together as responders for the football stadium, which that was reckless and fun. Yeah. We had a lot of fun doing that. We got some unique perspectives on a couple games.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of our first job together. And then, as Josh mentioned, I went to the insurance industry, and then he called me up and was like, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing the same thing." And I was like, "Yeah, come on board." Joke's on him. And no, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of the how it's made, learning all sorts of different stuff about a bunch of different industries, which was fun because every time I had a conversation with a friend, I could relate to whatever industry they were in because I'd probably seen it. But I started to get tired of being in the insurance industry, and I took some time off, went to be a stay-at-home dad. And then Josh calls me out of the blue and says, "Do you want to come teach for AFSA?" And teaching was the one thing that I really enjoyed while I was with the insurance company. Got to do some of the training there for some of our new engineers, and they would send us to a hands-on lab at the manufacturer that Josh actually went to work for. And
shout out Tycho. Tycho's JCI's lab is fantastic.
Yep.
Vikings too, but that's where we kind of stepped into the professional world of hands-on teaching and learning.
Really nice to go tie what we saw in the field to a lab setting where, because from a lot of the insurance side, you're not allowed to really touch anything. So it was nice to get the time in the lab to actually touch and break and get the hands-on understanding. So we had a better feel for what was happening when we were looking over, reports and things like that. So,
and I do not like talking about myself. I will let you know that right now. But I know that a lot of people were probably in the same boat you were, and I was, where you looked into fire protection engineering. I had all different plans, right? I was going to be culinary. My grandfather, I grew up in the firehouse. I did some volunteer firefighting. I wanted to be a firefighter. He retired young. Pension was great. Retired young, but couldn't throw a football with me. And I realized that life-saving thing was great. What can I do and not blow my back out by the at a young age, right? So started to research that and similar path of Maryland and all the schools. Worcester Polytech was too close to home for me, and but it seems like people fall into it. However, kind of interesting that we both found it before starting a career, but you can get here in multiple different ways.
You guys, like we said, you guys are very hands-on with training, especially here in the lab. I guess, how do you guys make sure that, all the training that you guys do offer stays relevant? Do you guys offer a bunch of different, fire pumps that you guys can play with, or different, sprinklers or anything like that?
I think that's the fun part about the lab, is that, especially this lab, we have a little bit of everything. And we've had enough experience with enough variety in the field, especially from our time in insurance, kind of going to a ton of different operations all the time. It was really never the same thing twice. It was pretty much a new facility every time. So we got a lot of exposure to a lot of different setups, a lot of different scenarios, and we got to work through things that were good and also things that weren't so good. So that gave us a lot of exposure to kind of pull some experience out of to try to keep it relevant. But then with the lab and the variety of stuff we have in there, there's really not much we can't mock up, at least fairly closely, to talk through. And then it's just kind of pulling off of the experience of the folks coming in for training. Hey, I saw XYZ. Okay, let's go set that up in the lab, see what that looks like, talk through it, make sure that we're understanding it and we're on the same page.
So it's unique about the hands-on lab in general, and to be completely honest, it would not be here if it wasn't for our members that really showed their need for the hands-on training, and our associate members, the manufacturers. We've got a great relationship with them, and our team in general. Like, of course, being a sprinkler nerd, I'll call out our technical team. I'd put our technical team up against the best in the industry. And in fact, we have gone up against best in the industry, right? And we can stand toe to toe. But we have a passion to drive this to be the best international training. And that being said, once we start working with our contractors and we start working with the associate members, where they have all the resources that they've been very gracious in providing to us, we've got all of the kinds, all the manufacturers, all the different types of valves you would ever want to see. We have a couple valves out there that you probably will never see, right? Because we got donation from a local tech school from some older equipment, 30 changeable outlets that we can spray any sprinkler that any manufacturer wants to show off, or any type that we're trying to show our designers to our inspectors, really anybody. 3 fire pumps, right? We've got 2 mechanical pumps back there that are all different orientations, horizontal split case, thank you to SPP, the vertical inline from Talco, the residential pump and tank unit there as well, that home hydrant, and then of course Tyco, Reliable, Viking, Victaulic have all provided every one of their both newer and older valves. That's one thing that we've got here to keep fresh. Keeping fresh is good. However, this equipment lasts a long time. So if I'm taking you out into the field, Nate, there's a good chance you're not running into the 2024 brand new valve, right? We're probably running into something in the 60s, 50s that's there. So we want to make sure that we hit the new, but also get people what they need. And that's how we just kind of stay or have designed it so that it's easily changeable. You can change things out fairly quickly. I say that. We've never been pipe fitters. We've gotten some experience on that now. And I say fairly quickly, probably 2 or 3 times as long as most of the pipe fitters would take to do it, and takes a little effort, but we can get it in there.
You also asked about keeping it relevant. I think Josh and I both realized early on in our career how important that hands-on training, hands-on lab was for our development. And so I think that's something that we kind of pull on that experience a fair bit with, as to how it shaped us into the professionals we are. So we can kind of pass that along and where our pinch points were as far as learning and understanding, to make sure that we pass that along to the people coming through our lab, make sure they get the same, experience that we did.
And I learned a lot from Bob Caputo. We had a previous job, great instructor, great person, Phil Gunning. But if you look at our tech team, Bob Caputo, John Denhart, Kevin Hall, we don't teach the slides, right? Which I think is unique. A lot of people teach the slides. You come through a class this week on the inspection, testing, and maintenance of water-based fire protection systems, and you take it with us 2 weeks from now, it's going to be a completely different class, right? Based on what the needs of are, or the needs are of the people that are actually there. And that's really a big point of our training, is you're leaving here with what you need, not what we think you need.
Yeah, I guess especially whenever it comes to your ITM classes that you mentioned, I guess what emphasis do you guys place on, preventative maintenance versus, that reactive maintenance that, people might see, after things go off, or, things don't function properly on a test? How do you kind of differentiate?
So with the group of people that we have and the unique experiences, I think one of the things that we do very well is to try to get the person who's working on that piece of equipment to realize that they're doing a service for a customer, and ultimately that could affect the customer, their livelihood, their property, their pocketbook, which, I mean, our contractors are business people, right? You're there to make money. However, structuring your conversation on great not community service. What am I talking about?
Customer service.
Yeah,
Sorry, I got arrested last week. No, I'm just kidding. Customer service for that long-term retention of the recurring net revenues where the money is, right? I mean, that's why we all have a subscription service to, at this point with kids, right? 5 video, whatever. Anyways, we know that that's important, but not just showing them that the book says you must do this at this time, telling them what the bad side or what could happen, and also giving them the customer, the authority having jurisdictions perspective, everyone's perspective, so they understand the whole concept, I think really pushes their desire to also want to educate that building owner who's going to be living with that system until you have that call, and I know emergency calls make good money, but if we can avoid that, I'd much rather retain this customer for 10 years than just have a 1-year service contract with them.
It's a lot more of not just teaching to the book, but teaching, okay, this is what the book says, but here's the background as to why that's important. Help educate them, almost train the trainer, so that when they're out in front of that customer providing that customer service, they can say, hey, I want you to do whatever I'm asking you to do, and I know it's going to cost you money. We're all under budgetary, restrictions of some sort.
Except for you.
Well,
making bank. No,
if
just
you guys
kidding.
don't know, Eric's got big bottle.
But no, everybody's got that budgetary concern. So it's like, not only do I want you to spend your money, but here's why that's important. Here's why that matters. Because if you just go and teach to the book and say, hey, you have to do this because it says so, that's one thing, but that doesn't get a whole lot of buy-in. I think what we both noticed in a lot of the conversations that we had with AHJs, with customers, with really anybody involved in the process, was if you didn't take the time to explain why it was important, just because I told you to do it doesn't go all that far. If you say, hey, this is why it's important, this is why we do XYZ test, or this is why we want you to do this preventative maintenance, help get that buy-in, and then sell the customer on why that's important, why it matters, what that's going to potentially do in the long run to your system, makes a huge difference when it comes to, okay, yeah, that is something I want to spend my money on because now I see the importance, not just because my contractor told me to.
Right.
So there's that kind of customer service, and communication is, I think, a big pet peeve of ours within our industry. We feel like we've had quite a few conversations about this we could do so much better communicating internally, externally, within, related trades within the fire protection world, not just sprinklers, but alarms, special hazards.
The example being that you'll have an installer, someone who's hanging the pipe, complaining that the designer put the 6-inch valve up in the ceiling, and it's frustrating. It's annoying. I've got to lift this thing 20 feet up in the air. It's heavy. And then the service person comes out and is like, who designed this and who installed this? Because the drain is right in the middle of the beautiful $1 million mulch bed that our customer has. And I have to run a hose all the way through the who knows where to get the water out of here. And then you take a step back and you look at it and you realize it's all the same company that have had a portion of that job at a different portion of that construction project and life cycle. And we just can't do that, right? So we can either tell you as training facility that you have to do a main drain test, or we can tell you have to do a main drain test. This is how you do this main drain test. This is why this main drain test is important for not only you, but for the fire protection and life safety of the building itself.
All right. Well, I guess, back earlier you talked about how, you guys feel like you offer the best training, here, and, you want to prepare people internationally. I guess speaking to that fact at that point, do you feel like you're in a position, or AFSA in general is in a position to expand their training of what you're doing for ITM or different things like that to, people that can't come into the office or even internationally?
Definitely. I mean, when you take a look around, yes, we utilize the National Fire Protection Association as our codes and standards. It's not just national. There's a lot of countries that have been around a lot longer than the United States and have different infrastructures and are following different standards. And there's a lot of other countries that are a lot further away in the development of their safety regulations. A good example of that is down in Latin America. Like, there's a lot of spots that are really good. There's a lot of spots where that infrastructure is not great, or that need and desire hasn't been there. Fortunately, I've got to work on quite a few international projects to a point, or at least be a part of the discussion from international companies. That was a nice thing about the insurance industry, for sure. I know that, of course, Bob's been all over teaching for an FPA, and he's had his hand in a lot of international projects as well. And we have the passion, the knowledge, and the technical know-how. So we're not far off from being able to offer that anywhere. And you're starting to see that now. We've been in conversations as AFSA with some of our partners or some contractors out in Europe. Saudi Arabia down to Latin America, and I don't expect that to slow down. That need is still there.
Right.
And yes, we are starting to format some of our training in more of a interactive web-based platform, which with the use of technology and some of our initiatives are to try to get those into some different languages as well. That's been the conversation. So I don't think we're far off. I think we could do it now if we need to, if the opportunity presents itself.
I think the hardest part for us is just going to be switching from imperial to metric.
Yeah. Yeah, but we get there.
We'll get there.
NFPA at least puts in both numbers,
Right.
We figure it out. The measurement might not be 100% what they're used to, but we'll be close enough.
I guess, and, speaking of expanding and, just doing the ton of training that you guys do, for people that don't know, we have people in and out, every week, almost, and, we might slow down for a week, but then there's a class in every room. I guess, how do you guys, and I'd love to hear from you both, measure success as a trainer, as someone that's, educating these new apprentices, or maybe even somebody that's been on the job for 20 years that's still trying to learn these new things?
For me personally, my favorite thing teaching really any of the classes that we teach is the aha moment when the light bulb goes off, and you have that moment for a lot of people in a lot of these different classes.
You can't really hide that moment.
No, you can't. It's
when people get it.
When the dots connect and something is just like, oh my goodness, that's why we do it that way, or that's what that requirement means, or it just connecting some of those dots on, okay, I was trained on this 10 years ago, and they just told me this is how you do it, and I never understood why. So when those dots connect and you see that aha moment, that's kind of my measure of success personally, is like demystifying some of the requirements, making things less scary, whether it's demystifying how to do a fire pump annual test and what all the numbers mean, because half the time we're taking the new person, sticking them out, having them gather flows, gather all these numbers, and then we're going to send them off in the office, and they're going to do some magic in the background, and they're going to tell us it's good or not. And they don't really take the time to explain, or it's hydraulics where it's, okay, we're going to do a bunch of hand calculation, we're going to do a bunch of math.
Those are fun.
Computer programs do for you, and then you're getting a printout that gives you a bunch of numbers, and you're like, okay, what do these numbers mean? Where did this come from?
What in the world is a Hazen Williams?
Right? So then demystifying that, okay, here's what the fire pump numbers are actually being used for, here's what they're evaluating against, or all those numbers on the printout for your calculations, here's what all that means, here's where that came from, this is how changing your inputs are actually going to impact the entire system, impact the numbers, let you drive down to become a better designer, a better ITM person, whatever. So when people walk away saying, I've taken a bunch of these trainings and that's the first time this has ever been well explained, or I had an aha moment, that's kind of how I gauge success as a trainer.
My gauge of success is not quite as creative as Eric's is. Mine is, did you leave this room getting what you expected to get out of it, plus more? Right? That's really what my gauge is, and the tool that I do use to measure the gauge is really, training is not just providing information, right? It's very psychological process, right? Because to your point, there are classes, and just a couple of weeks ago we had a class where you've got somebody not calling anybody out or showing age at all, but you've got somebody who's been in this industry as long as I've been alive, sitting next to somebody who didn't know what a sprinkler was 3 or 4 weeks ago. And if that environment and that learning environment allows to the comfortability for that brand new person to foster questions and actually ask those questions without that 40-year-old person with their experience, just kind of, which you'll notice a lot of times, it kind of buffers the new people, right? Because it's intimidating. Even as an instructor, sometimes it's like just because of time, not necessarily, and experience, you could probably teach this class. I wouldn't say I'm pretty good, right? Not better than me, but you probably could. Right, and a lot of our members could, just because it's a wide range of experience, but also be able to harvest that discussion and me learn. Right. If we are all learning together, because I'm not. As soon as I think I'm done, there's a few hundred other codes and standards to pick up, and it's time for me to be done. So if we're able to utilize their experience to everyone learn based on their experiences or their scenarios or whatever comes up, to me, that's a successful course.
Right. I don't know about you, but I usually learn something new every class. Even if it's a class I've taught a ton of times, just based on where the discussion goes as a group, because like you mentioned earlier, we don't necessarily teach to the slides.
Yeah.
We'll kind of allow the discussions to go where they will. And I learn all sorts of new stuff just based off of the conversations that we're having. But that's also the kind of the fun part, is you can tailor some of the conversations to, okay, for the new people in the room, this is how we do it and why we do it. For the people that have been doing it for a while,
when they get something,
okay, what have you seen? Like, what experiences do you want to add? When did you have a situation where this kind of went off the rails potentially? Or especially with the ITM stuff being a little bit more fluid and there being a lot of liability that people don't realize they're potentially picking up. Sometimes that's a fun can of worms to open, and you'll throw out a topic where you know it's going to be a controversial because you know how it works in the field and you know what the book says, and they sometimes don't always align.
You mean they don't fit perfectly together?
No,
that's crazy.
Which, I mean, I guess that leads me to another question that I actually had. How do you guys keep up with NFPA 25 and the ever-changing, standards that you guys have? Because, I mean, I can just think of off the top of my head all the seminars that I've given, and it's been, 2020 edition, 2023 edition. You're constantly changing and they're constantly updating.
So that's been one of the really fun parts for me about this job in particular, is because we try to represent our membership on a bunch of the different committees. It allows us as it allows us as the technical team to sit on a bunch of these committees and actually get the time to sit down and look at the updates, get involved in the process. Because I think when I was with the insurance company, I probably fell into more of the role that most people are in, where it's, okay, I know a new edition gets published, but I didn't know much about how that process actually worked. I didn't know about how to put in a public input or a public comment. I never got involved in that code development process until I got here and really got to get involved. So getting involved with the codes, and then just because we're constantly trying to update our training, and
we're lucky because to Eric's point, most people have a job to do, and their job requires product, and of course ours does too. However, especially with our contractors, right, you're always working. So for you to take an extra 2 hours of your day to dive into the newest code, the newest standard, try to figure out what it's saying and what they meant, well, that's kind of what we're here for, right? I mean, that's really our job, is to get that information out. So we look out. Every week we're getting emails or phone calls from our members because they've run into this strange situation that, unless you ran into this situation, you probably never actually read the section of that book. And our job is to help guide that, or help those discussions with fire marshals, authorities having jurisdiction, whatever the case might be, and have to learn it. And if you call us with the 2016 edition, we know that things have changed in the 2022, 2025 edition of NFPA 13, just as an example. So we go back and try to give you that path rather than us just tell you an answer. And it's inherently built into our job. That's also why, like, in my personal life, I can't stand reading, right? Because we're reading all the time.
That is not just me.
No, I can't stand it, but I enjoy reading what we have to do and applying it. But we just luck out where it's inherently built in the job that you're coming here to a training class. The education classes will align with the standards that the certification testing are going to be at. But you come to a training class, we're teaching you the newest material as it comes out, as it's printed, knowing that you don't necessarily have that adopted. However, you're going to know it's coming down the pipeline. You're going to know where it came from, have that understanding. So if we don't know that, we can't teach it.
Right.
So it's just kind of inherently built into the job, luckily, because keeping up with that is not, even as our job, it's not easy.
No. But the other nice part is, because we're so involved in the process, or we know other people on the team that are involved in the process, when questions come up as far as when did this change, why did this change, what was the thought process, we actually can provide some more insight there, because we were probably involved or knew somebody that was involved in that discussion, why that change came about, where it came from, what was the driving factor behind it. So it's not, hey, this new change just all of a sudden showed up in the book and I have no idea what the thought process was. We can also help to open up those discussions on, okay, this change came, who drove that? What was the driving factor behind it? What was the thought process?
I guess, and talking about change, I think that's something that comes to my mind, especially nowadays, is a lot of technology is always changing. You know, how people do the same things, even ITM, you know, testing is probably changing. So, you know, how are, you know, advancements in like technology, you know, I know there's like smart sensors and things like that. How does that have been affecting training and how, you know, somebody might go about doing their job?
So from a training perspective, we're obviously trying to update all of our training material to take advantage of online learning, trying to break some stuff down into modules, make things a bit more approachable, a bit more interactive, things like that. But as far as the technology getting put into the codes and standards, it's starting to make its way in. But as an industry, we are a little slower to adopt new technology. I joke that we are a bit mistrustful of anything new. We really don't make changes until, unfortunately, people die. And it's the sad reality of our industry thus far. And I'd like to think that we're changing, we're becoming a bit more proactive. But there are some technologies that have been used in a lot of other industries for quite a few years now that are just starting to make its way into our industry, and everybody's becoming really mistrustful. And I've told a couple of the classes that we've had coming through, if I could rub a crystal ball and look into the future, I think some of this remote technology is going to make a big difference. And it's something that is going to impact our industry, and we're going to have some big changes. So trying to stay up with the technology and the changes and really not drag your feet on, I don't think it's going to happen. It's happening. It's actively happening. Looking at what the manufacturers are starting to put out, the technology that's coming out, there's going to be some big changes coming our way over the next probably 30 years. But
yeah, and I think this is one that we've been proactive with. As soon as there's a talk of electronically activated sprinkler, right? We made sure that was the NFPA standards. And for a couple cycles now, the allowance for remote inspections has been there. We're still trying to weed it out. Like an example, for fire pump testing, there's a point in time, if anything goes wrong, I think you had to be there in 4 hours. I think it's moved up to 10 or so. We'll confirm some of that information here in a minute. But like, we're trying to weed that out because it's not necessarily always happening. NFPA 915 is a fairly new standard that's on the remote inspections and tests, right? And that's not just for fire sprinklers. That's for all of the things in terms of fire protection. In terms of training, as soon as the new stuff comes out, of course, we get it installed in our lab and start teaching on it. Right, so that's the fun stuff that's the fun part of the relationships that we have with our manufacturers. We mentioned it, but one that you see some of this technology come out. AGF had donated a lot of their low point drains and whatnot, but with low point drains, there's indicators that there's water in them now. Right, that never happened. You had to just trust that people were draining their systems off until it froze and broke. We've got those installed with heaters, and there's more technology coming down the pipeline. We have Sea Air and of course General Air Products, and their new stuff is coming here as well, which is digital readouts on their pressure switches and things like that, which are new. So we make sure that people have seen them before, but also try to keep up in the standard. So yeah, that 4 hours. So when you look at the remote monitored automated testing at NFPA 25. This is currently 2023 edition, and the times have changed or will change for the 2026 edition, because that was a discussion at the committee level that we had for a fairly long time. But it was qualified personnel shall be able to respond to the pump location upon abnormal condition within 4 hours. And they thought that was good back then, right? But then we realized that with being able to video with different pressure transducers and regulators, digitally being able to read that out, vibration analysis, that if they're using that, maybe they're remote, right? They're out in the middle of the panhandle of Texas, whatever the case is. That that 4 hours might not be practical. So you start to see us, I think, build a little faith into the technology just on these slow changes, which has been really kind of a neat discussion to hear, because a lot of people in the committee have been there a long time, right? Which did nothing against that whatsoever, because that experience is great. But those are typically the ones that are like, let me help you open up PowerPoint, right? Like, and we're starting to see that change, and saw it a while back when they start giving allowances for electronic tamper switches, right, which allow you to push back your inspection frequencies. So I think we're in an okay space. I'm not sure what it looks like though, Nate. It's like everything else. AI is a great tool. It's something that use personally. I'm still trying to figure out how to properly use that. There's a lot of human interaction that still needs to be done to get stuff like that, outlines and things like that kind of formulated. And AI now, I mean, you look at Tesla with their R2D2 basically, right? I don't know where this goes, how quickly it goes. I know where it goes. Right. I just don't know how quickly it goes. And using technology like that to start monitoring things, I don't know.
The thing that excites me about it, though, is at least from an ITM standpoint, one of our biggest problems is, there's facilities out there that are doing a great job keeping up with their ITM, but those aren't usually the ones we hear about because they're doing a good job and the systems are working like they're supposed to. The ones we hear about, the ones that make the news, are the ones that aren't keeping up with it. And I think a lot of it's because people get overwhelmed, it's expensive, things like that. So when we start adding some of this technology in there, it's a potential we can get more qualified people getting eyes on this stuff, making it a little easier on the facilities to make sure that this inspection, testing, and maintenance of these systems is getting done. So I think it might actually also open up some avenues to help us improve the quality and the maintenance on these systems, just making it more accessible, easier to work on.
The plus side is it's water and pipe. Right. So it's not like on the fire alarm side, right? Yeah. We've got computers. There's probably a lot more potential drastic change quickly.
For sure.
For like the alarm side. For us, it's water and pipe. And at some point, everyone seems to be in agreement. Just because you're doing this, somebody eventually's got to get there. So like that mindset, which I think we're kind of breaking culturally, like is going to take jobs away. I think it's not as relevant as could it potentially slow down some recruit? Well, someone's got to analyze those results and tests, right? Just because you're doing it doesn't mean that you're getting any information from it unless you know what you're looking at.
Right.
So it's exciting. It's kind of fun.
Well, and with our labor shortage, it might help get the qualified people actually looking at the stuff they need to be doing instead of spending their time doing a lot of the other tasks that might not be worth what their experience is gained for.
Is valued for. Yeah.
For sure. And I guess kind of building off of that, what does training look like for you too? And, I could say the future, let's just say 5 years, what does that look like, especially not only with the advancement of technology, just in your eyes, how does it feel like it's going to move?
Fantastically.
That's a broad answer.
There as I was collecting my thoughts, to be completely honest.
I know I'm giving you these gut wrenching questions,
and we're trying to be proactive,
right?
So I feel like a lot of people have an issue with my generation of people, but I feel like we are in a really good spot to help make this transition because I don't really know a schoolroom without a computer. Right, when I was early on, so like the transition through technology and learning ways, like YouTube was, killed so much time on YouTube after school, right?
Right.
And these micro learning, I think is the term that's being used some because people are realizing that listening for 5-6 minutes, a bunch of different chunks of different things, you learn a lot more pieces, and I think that's where we're headed, right? We've got this beautiful lab. And I think what you're going to start to see is rather than you come in here for our design school is going to be hands-on as much as it can be, right? At the end of the day, we're doing hydraulic calculations by hand. That being said, that doesn't mean that you're not going to split the day up with more interactive electronic phone-based or web-based training modules to kind of split that day up. And we're already starting to make those interactive trainings, but I really see the benefit of utilizing social media for sure to get us there on a 30-second reel on what a control valve is. Stuff like that, I think, is going to progress it. The issue that I have with a lot of our knowledge is retiring.
Right.
Well, so the other neat part about starting to integrate some of this technology is that we can take some of that information that's, you know, kind of stored in people's head. Hey, I saw this at one point. We can start to capture some of that in a little bit more accessible format. So it's not only, okay, this is what this is or this is why we do it, but we can also show examples of this is what can possibly go wrong, this is why, and we can start to kind of accumulate all that in a more accessible format, hit some of those quick hitters. I think some of our problem is just keeping people's focus.
And integrating it in, right? I mean, that's one thing that even in the personal life, things like ChatGPT aren't going nowhere. So we've got a couple options here. We can either just kind of ignore it, let it take over, or maybe we build that into training of like, hey, I've got this lab coming up, or this inspection coming up. Let's try to utilize it as a prompt and get an outline and a good path on what the most efficient route is for this. And it needs personal refinement, right? It still needs that human touch. Every time you look at those, the prompts that come out, if you were to read that, it sounds robotic.
Right.
It's obviously going to change over time, but actually integrating stuff like that with different inspection softwares. Honestly, we've incorporated. You said we're slow to change. Building management software, your BIM type modeling, we've incorporated that into our intermediate design school. And what you'll hear is like, well, we don't use BIM. Right now, you don't use BIM. However, it's been out there for years now, and a lot of other trades use BIM, which means that it's coming for us to use BIM. So why not get ahead of that, teach that now, and get you to at least have seen it before it comes down the pipe, and we will all get to that age one day where you're like, oh, that's just new, right? New technology, and I'm used to my way. So before that happens, let's just start integrating that and start making this a new thing. Which it's fun though.
Right. Well, and with the lab and having the ability to go kind of take the technology that we know is coming and or is being used. I know we both are big advocates of the University of YouTube to learn all sorts of new stuff for personal projects and whatnot.
You broke what in the lab? I don't know. YouTube it. No, I'm just
right. But talking to some of the people that are coming through the lab when we're talking about, okay, how do you figure out how to reset your dry valve, right? Mm-hmm. Our kind of hopeful answer is that they're going to say, oh, yeah, I went and pulled the tech data sheet. And most of the time, that's not the answer. Most of the times I looked it up on YouTube and I followed whatever somebody else was doing. Well, if we know that's the way things are going, okay, let's put out some content that we know is good, know is accurate, because that's the other thing with YouTube. Or
the manufacturers have made it easy. Our lab versus other labs that I've been to have a ring binder full of all the technical data sheets for that riser. If we wait a little while before we print ours, we might not need that because they're shipping them with QR codes.
Right.
So implementing that and just taking that on, of course, we're probably going to have the backup of paper because we're old school. We got Bob and John around too. Right. But we're just embracing it. And to be honest, a lot of times we're rolling with the punches, figuring it out all together. And it's fun.
All right, to wrap it up here, I guess my last question for you both is, if you were talking to someone that wanted to get into this, that, it's very new. I guess if you were talking to me, how we would talk in, 6 months ago when I knew nothing.
Yeah.
What would you tell somebody to get them to understand maybe what this is, maybe why it's so important to understand what, ITM testing really is?
Basically just that these are systems that, whether you realize it or not, because I think most people kind of ignore a lot of our fire protection systems. They're in most of the buildings you're spending time in. Unfortunately, we don't have them in a lot of houses yet, but that's, I think, something that's also potentially, hopefully going to change, and we're going to start to see more there too. But in all of your commercial buildings, you're starting to see a lot more of these fire protection systems. And a lot of people don't realize what they're looking at and that these systems are even there. So starting the conversation of, hey, this is what this is. This is why it's here. This is how it works. This is what it does. This is how it protects you in this space. And then starting to talk about because we'll nerd out on fire, anything all day. But the fire problem is only shifted, as we've gone to more lightweight building materials, more plastics. We're having less fires, but the fires we're having are faster growing, more intense. So these systems are important to make sure you actually can get out of the building. But if people don't understand how they work, why they're important, there's no push on building management to keep up with the systems other than it's regulated by law. So, just building some awareness to the systems, what they do, why they're there. I think most of the time when you walk into a building, you just assume that those systems are in good shape. They may or may not be, right? So if we can get more education on fire safety as a whole, I think it's just going to help promote safer buildings in general. So
the great point is you're a behind the scenes firefighter, right? I mean, and you're taking care of people in life. And in terms of inspection, testing, and maintenance, to your question, is that most of our major fire losses with sprinklers are still, and it's been years of almost the same data over and over again, are because a control valve's shut, right? And that's mind-blowing to me. So there's really an opportunity to help people. But to go further and open it up to more fire protection in general, fire sprinklers, of course, but fire protection in general, as I think you've noticed the last 6 months, there's so much opportunity in this industry. So much opportunity. It's kind of a double-edged sword to be such a small niche in the construction industry because really, and it's new, right? I mean, early 1900s is when it was established in comparison to many of the other carpentry, things like that. Which means that a lot of the people who started the industry are starting to retire. However, that being said, since it's so small, it's one of the few industries that I truly feel kind of the American dream. The harder you work, the more opportunity you get, the better it pays off. And that's really, especially now with everything that's going on in the world, to have that life safety aspect where that even during COVID, you have a place to go to work and get your bills paid. Even if the construction market drops, that's the plus side of inspections, your design sales and your installations might decrease. However, someone still's got to maintain the system. So you have that basically safety net. But the more you read and the more that you're willing to go out and talk to the experienced people and the more you're willing to learn, the more money you're going to make, the more other opportunities you have. And that's really what makes us unique. And that's really kind of what makes people fall in love with it once you find it. That's the hard part. Like, I wish there's like a metal detector for fire sprinklers.
Right. Well, it's also one where you have the opportunity to make a huge difference, whether it's, helping to make sure that the buildings are safe or getting involved, learning the stuff, and then getting involved in the codes and standards process and the research and development process.
You can make change.
Things like that. You can make huge changes that impact how things are done throughout essentially the world now, because we're becoming so connected that the changes we're making to some of these codes and standards are being adopted, not just here in the States, but across the world. So you can literally make changes that have a huge impact.
What's funny about this is Nate thinks he's about to wrap it up, but I'm about to flip the script on him. You're new to the industry.
Yeah.
What would you tell somebody getting into the industry?
Don't listen to Josh McDonald. No,
Facts. Spitting nothing but truth on the AFSA Tech Talk.
Man.
The K factor.
I think that, there's a lot of, I think I'm just going to keep it simple. I think I'm thinking too hard about it. If wherever you are, if you're in a building, great. If you're in a car, disregard whatever I'm saying. If you're in a building, 9 times out of 10, I need you to just look up. You're gonna see a sprinkler there, and that's 9 times out of 10. Now, if you're in your own house, it's hit or miss. You don't know, but any shopping mall, any supermarket, any school, any business, outside of your home, probably gonna have sprinklers in it. And that's the thing that I never really wrapped my brain around until I was like, oh, this is, a real association and this is a real thing.
Yeah.
And just to think how saturated that, how many construction companies and how many things like that, but you still, if you like labor and you want to work hard and you want to do something that matters, fire sprinkler, that's it. There's not a whole, there's not the 50 million construction companies like there is for, just
plumbing,
building a house
or
plumbing or, carpentry. This is a very specific skill set. Now, do you do some things that, you can kind of see with plumbing and different things like that? Sure, whatever. But there's not someone that, I mean, you might know somebody now, but there's not someone that that can be like, oh yeah, I know how to throw up that sprinkler, or oh no, I know how to lay that pipe, or
how it even works.
Right. Yeah. I can go into a pump room and do a flow test. I'm not about to go and do that. But I think that misnomer that there's no one that does it. No, there's people that do it, and we need a lot more people to keep doing it. I think that's the biggest thing I would tell people.
And it's been exciting because you didn't come from sprinklers at all.
No.
And you took a course with us, and then you came in and helped out a couple times, and you're almost talking shop.
I mean, I can. I mean, I can, but
the passion once you fall into it too.
Yeah,
I mean, in 6 months is crazy.
And I'm gonna use a term. I don't think it's a politically correct term, but it's something that my wife calls sprinkler fitters, or people that deal in the sprinkler industry, and we're the white collar firefighters.
Yeah,
and it's just like, because we're not out there. Yeah, that's why I said it's not. Okay. But she's like, those guys are like your colleagues, those are the people that, you really work with. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. And, to a certain extent, we do help them, keep people and property safe.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're not out there breaking our backs. She
needs to come to our apprenticeship competition. And tell them they're white collar.
She'll be there. She'll be there in DC.
Sweet.
And I told her that's why we can't be white collar.
Yeah, because we're gonna spec some 6-inch pipe.
Actually, you got to bring her down, and we can just let the water sit for a week before we spray a sprinkler.
Ugh.
We'll see how.
Don't do my wife like that, man.
No, I mean, she doesn't have to be on that. I didn't say we're gonna put her in the room.
But it's different, and I think that as different as it is, we all kind of have the same goal, us and the NFPA and fire marshals and firefighters, and I think as much as people think that we're all different, and sometimes we all do have opposing views, and we do not get along per se.
Right.
I think that we all have the same common goal. Yeah. So now, yes, we are going to wrap up because
you're running this thing today.
I'm in charge. But thank you too for
don't argue with the guy with the mixer.
I mean, I'm also much bigger than you.
Okay.
So let's
and
not
the door's
that.
between me. Yeah, you're between me and the door. This is the issue. We're gonna wrap this thing up.
But thank you guys for sitting down today, and no, it was great talking and getting to flip the script on you guys. I think that it's important that people know how important training is and how important this industry is. So
appreciate it, Nate.
Of course.
For taking us out of our comfort zone.
Of course. Until next time.
This has been the K Factor Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share wherever you tune in to podcasts. Or head over to our website for more. Reach out to us anytime at technical@firesprinkler.org. Stay safe and always learn as we keep the fire protection conversation going.